If you're looking for a dense, slightly sweet quick bread to go with your comfort food dinner, you've found it. This pumpkin beer bread uses ginger ale in its place for a subtle gingery kick, and the sweetness is adjustable to your liking. The cinnamon honey butter is perfect to melt into all the nooks and crannies and add another layer of fall flavor. So grab a cup of hot cocoa. It's time to whip up some magic in Mrs. Kringle's kitchen. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees. It's important to note that you'll need self-rising flour for this recipe instead of all-purpose flour. If you don't have any, you can make your own by adding 1½ teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of salt to each cup of all-purpose flour that your recipe calls for, and then mixing it thoroughly before using it. To a large bowl, add 3 cups of self-rising flour, 1 to 4 tablespoons of regular or maple sugar. I used 3 tablespoons of maple, 1½ teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, and give it a good stir to thoroughly combine. Add the 1/4 cup of browned or melted butter, and make sure it's cooled just a little bit. If you're using brown butter, don't forget to scrape out all the brown bits since that's where the flavor's at. Add 1/2 cup of pumpkin puree, and only if you have it on hand you can add about 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla paste. Honestly, it didn't make a huge difference, so it's totally optional. Make sure that you use 8 ounces of a high-quality ginger ale, or you can use beer or another carbonated beverage that's complementary. I always start with 8 ounces and then I add it as needed, and I ended up using 11 ounces for this batch. Butter a loaf pan and spoon the batter into the pan and flatten it on top so that it's even. Bake in the oven for 40 to 50 minutes or until the toothpick comes out clean in the middle. While that's baking, you can make your cinnamon honey butter. To a 1/4 cup of softened butter, add 1 teaspoon of good cinnamon and 1 tablespoon of honey. My favorite is Beekman 1802's vanilla or their cinnamon honey. So good. Mash it down and give it a stir until it's well combined. When the bread comes out of the oven, allow it to cool for 10 minutes. Then remove it from the pan and let it cool at least 10 to 20 more minutes. Use a serrated bread knife and cut it into slices. Oh yeah, just look at that dense, delicious bread. It is so subtle and it won't overpower your meal, and it complements it perfectly with the cinnamon honey butter. Melty goodness. Pumpkin ginger beer bread is a quick bread that will likely become a favorite. Its subtle, sweet, and light pumpkin flavor are just enough to invoke that feeling of fall, but not so much that you couldn't enjoy it any time of year. The cinnamon honey butter is a delightful topper for those who like it just a little sweeter. For the full printable recipe, go to mrskringleskitchen.com. If you're new, consider subscribing and click the bell to be notified when new videos go live.